So today we have Gabe Mayhan, cinematographer and producer. And I want to welcome you, Gabe, to join us to talk and go over a little bit about what you do. And I would love to, let my students ask you some questions. And you and I have known each other for how many years? Maybe 15-ish, something like that.
Yeah.
While. And are you originally from Little Rock, or are you from a different state, town?
Yeah. Born in Texas, lived there till I was 11, then moved to Arkansas. That's where my family was originally from. And kind of grew up there, just north of Little Rock, a little town called Valonia.
Okay.
That's where I kind of grew up, I suppose. Little Rock was the big city.
Mm-hmm. Which is hilarious. And now you're in LA, which is right?
I mean, I live, that's my base. But I live an hour and a half north of Los Angeles, a little town called Ojai. It's a big little small town. It's not a very big town at all, but a lot of people seem to know it. And it gets pretty busy on the weekends with traffic, but from traffic from LA, people coming up and hanging. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So weekends a little hectic over there, but
yeah,
usually work. I mean, being a cinematographer, you might be working a lot on weekends, right?
Oh, of course. My work pretty much consists of, in the long form, it's going in between mostly feature films, which are feature length films, meaning like an hour and a half, or what we in the business called scripted, and nonfiction films, which is documentary. And so I kind of hit in between the two pretty much consistently for the last 10 years. I mean, things since the strikes have gotten strange and contradictions. We just released a doc that we did for Peacock and Oxygen. And we were like, wow, why aren't we hearing from their NBC team? And turns out I was looking in the trades today and like, oh, all those people got let go. It's really interesting. So it was kind of like the last little documentary of that arm of NBC. So things are shifting, and it's like, that's kind of a different world right now, and just kind of trying to navigate that. So consistently for the last 12 years, I've been moving back and forth between scripted and unscripted work, which, those two, well, if you will, like those two different crafts of cinematography have really, like, it's really been interesting how they've informed one another, how I kind of weave in out of and bring pieces of my scripted work into my documentary work, specifically on when I do interviews or what we call recre. And then same with when I do more scripted work, my documentary background sometimes can really help us out when we're in a pinch, specifically with like time and having to light, because so much of the time gets eaten up by lighting that when you work on a movie. And so they kind of work in tandem that way, and allow me to be a little bit more flexible than being so rigid, as a lot of cinematographers have definitely have earned that reputation of being slow and like taking their time and getting their work done.
Yeah, meticulously kind of.
Yeah. Which it's a meticulous job. It's not like something you can just kind of throw together. I mean, not saying that you can't, but you have to understand what the throw together looks like. And I think it takes time to develop that style and understanding. And that's the beautiful thing I love about being a cinematographer, is like, it's not a job that I feel like personally for me, I could ever get bored with, because it's constantly, every situation is different. Like every director I work with is different. Every production designer I work with is different. And so that soup of it is all going to be different every time. The way that we move the camera, the way that, like, my style sometimes will come in and out of things, and maybe I leave that for other people to talk about style. I don't know if I actually have one. If you look at my, like, a compilation of my reel, maybe there's things that I tend to lean towards, like warm skin tones and or the way I'll frame things, with wider lenses closer. So maybe some of that is there, but it's definitely different. It should for me, I always feel like, if you can tell a film that someone is shooting just based off of the frame, um, then maybe that cinematographer should be a bit more collaborative, because it feels like they're kind of just doing their own thing as opposed to being, a part of a team that is telling a story.
Gotcha. Cool. So let's go into some of your history. I
Mhm.
think it would be a good thing to know. I mean, you and I started working together on some of the feature films after you did Pillow.
I was
Yeah,
just talking to Josh literally right before I got on this call.
oh,
Josh, the
cool.
director. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 How are they doing? Are they
They're
still in
doing
Arkansas?
great. They're doing great.
Okay.
They're doing
Okay.
their thing. Yeah. He's still writing. Yeah. And so like we were just talking about like what life those films might should have now.
Mm-hmm.
Because the changing, shifting sands, place to watch anything is YouTube. And so what we're trying to do is position, we have a lot of like content that we've built over the years that just kind of exists out in the world. And like I feel like a lot of people now are who work in the industry that are taking ownership of that and creating what we're talking about doing. Honestly, I'll just tell you because I do think it's interesting and I do think it's kind of a path forward. Is creating our own channel of kind of the world that we created, because you were part of that too. Like when we were, from 2009 to like 2015, there was kind of a vibe where we
Mm-hmm.
grew up in Arkansas that was unique to that time and place, that was pretty much like lightning in the bottle. It's the whole reason why I have a career in this industry. And so I'm very thankful. And it's also, it couldn't have been done by myself. So that's, I know, it had to be like, I had to have Josh and Miles and Graham and Daniel and you and like all the people who like, even like the guy Galloways and people who like lent us gear and like helped us build a craft and career, because we had the energy and time and we were young and didn't have families and stuff, and it was amazing and fun. And so like being a part of a collective like that, I think is always beneficial as opposed to trying to be like a lone wolf. And so, essentially, a classroom full of students of like mind who want to make stuff, that is a collective. And just lean into that, like, because I was the person that could figure out how to light things and the way things could look. And then there was a person who was really good at writing, or two or three or four, um, and could create these stories. And then there was technicians, that could operate jibs like you, and like move cameras, and people who could be a part of Grip and Electric or the art team and do
Mm-hmm.
those things. And this is the time to do that. And also there's not a more unique time to where you could essentially go out and start monetizing that right away, because the traditional models of distribution are falling apart, and there's no necessarily gatekeepers to that. So as opposed to like looking at it as like this very it's something that I'm having to kind of deal with right now. It's like, oh, I've built my whole career geared toward this traditional way of distribution, and you either adapt or you go away. And so I prefer to try to adapt and try to like figure out what this is going to be. And one of the things that we're interested in is YouTube.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because that's what I'm hearing over and over because of the distribution and everything's kind of getting made out of the country. A lot of stuff is now, because of the strikes. A lot of production had to
That's
move.
specifically, yeah, it's specifically towards what happened with the strikes after the WGA and the actor strike at SAG. Then IATSE, which is a lot of what they call below the line. And what that basically means is there's this thing called a call sheet, and above the line is producers and actors typically, and below the line is typically crew. And IATSE is a union bargaining organization that kind of oversees all of those crafts, meaning, camera, art, uh, hair, makeup, all the things, transportation, all those things. And so what happened during that bargaining agreement, things got more expensive. And the three major players in the movie industry right now are tech companies. And tech companies do what they do, where they say, oh, so here's our product. How do we have more of an ROI? And it's like, oh, well, this is a big cost shooting here with these crews. How much would it cost to shoot this in Canada? How much would this cost to shoot in Europe? And obviously, the difference is significant enough that they have decided that that's what they're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So now we're kind of put in a position as creators here in the US and filmmakers to almost sort of pioneer a new way forward.
And a new indie scene, to be honest with you. It's going to be a new independent scene. And I don't know how that looks like as far as like creating, like, because I'm in it right now as far as like creating a sustainable like wage forward. I know there has to be a way. I know that those are the most interesting stories. And so I think in the next, 3 to 5 years, that will all kind of play out and figure it out. But I do think that what will happen is the independent cinema will become something that we fall back on and essentially brings people back to the theater. I don't think that people's attention span has shifted that much. I still think that we enjoy movies. I think that supply and demand became out of whack with the amount of stuff being made as opposed to the amount of time and viewership. And the way of marketing that became very strange once, honestly, during the pandemic and things came out of the theater, it was no way to track it. And so I think right now we're just in a time of disruption, which there's opportunity in disruption. And so, yeah, I'm just trying to navigate that right now.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
but
didn't mean to go off on that tangent, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We're okay with tangents. So yeah, like going back to that lightning in a bottle time. What's interesting about that to me is that sort of happens all over the place, depending on sort of your position within the sort of the market and sort of who you know and like, so it's sort of happening all the time, or it has a potential to happen all the time, just sort of like waiting for that perfect storm of people and ideas and actually activating those ideas into real films and so on and so forth. Tell me just about that time, like we just how it shaped you again and what your mindset was in terms of like, what did you go into this thinking? And obviously you're an aspiring cinematographer. You're trying to get work doing short films, doing, TV stuff with public TV and all these different sort of things that are like corporate things that you're making money off of. But you have these sort of like passion projects that you're maybe not really getting paid for, but that it's sort of like, tell me where your head is, like during that time and what was driving you to be a part of those things? Because you said it really shaped your career.
Yeah, I mean, lightning in a bottle, just kind of backing up there. The lightning in the bottle, I do think that's depending on your kind of like, you can create that. You know what I mean? Like if you have that kind of vibration, it's like, this is what I want, like, this is what I'm excited about. And you have that just excitement of like creating, and it can literally be one person that's infectious to another group. And I think that, there was multiple people in the case that, where we're talking about, that were just excited about making stuff and like
Yeah.
really had, as opposed to talking about it, like we just did it, I think that's the
Mhm.
biggest difference. And as far as like what it did for, my career wise, it was like, sorry, that's the kind of the ask, right? Like what it
Yeah.
did for me, yeah, personally. So
Yeah.
basically it allowed me to, one, I was making short films, well, basically before then. So backing up, I went to school, I was going to graduate with a degree in history and geology. And but I always loved photography, and I took a class on film theory.
Mm.
And I was like, wait, what is this? Manipulating people through images. This sounds right up my alley. And I got hooked right away. I sat in the edit bay for the first time, literally lost track of time. It was like ended up being, I was like, wow, I really gotta pee. And I was like, it was 8 hours later. And so I was like, oh, this is different. This is weird. So I'm really into this. And so first job I got out of college, I ended up switching my major to, at the time, the only thing I could do was mass communication at the little state school I was going to. And so kind of learned something, not really. Basically, how to be a news monkey is I started in the mailroom of a local NBC affiliate in Arkansas,
Sure.
and eventually, like worked there for 2 years, and eventually made a demo reel out of the stuff that I shot in news. But I knew like that's not the path. But then I started working for I got I got a job working with this guy named Peon Smith, and I shot his like garden shows and homes and set and like, and I really
Mm.
started learning about culture and art in a way that I didn't know it then. I was too thick-headed and just too much of a like, I still had all my jock energy and that kind of stuff. And so it was like I didn't understand what was happening, but really what that was, like how all art forms can feed other art forms, meaning
Mhm.
that, his design principles in gardening, art forms can feed each other, and
Mhm.
how he designed gardens and how he used color and how he made a frame essentially, were definitely soaking in on me. And the way that light used to reflect off of um the way I would see like afternoon light, and I'd have somebody that worked there tell me it's like, oh, it's not good to shoot in that kind of light or something. And I remember that and thinking, why? It's the most beautiful. And they're like, because it changes the color of the actual color. And I'm like, yeah, but it looks amazing, and so
Mhm.
like it was, just trying to like figure out like this thing, like how light works off of, different surfaces. And then from there, I moved into shooting regional commercials for a production company.
Mm.
And it was really beneficial because those people had no idea what they were doing. And neither did I, as far as a
Mm.
cinematographer. And because I didn't really know what a director of photography did. And I went into panic mode about this whole thing about lighting. And camera stuff I pretty well understood as far as optically and how to like what my kind of like style. I feel like that's a very stylistic thing, but technically I needed to learn lighting. I had it What ended up being beneficial to me is I was very interested in the quality of light. And so that became my focus. And that is also kind of like really how I differentiated myself as a cinematographer, was how I lit things, because a lot of it is that.
Mm.
Um, and so then fast forward into like when I started shooting short films, I just started shooting for short films because I wanted to make movies. That's what I always wanted to do. And so I made a short film that, it was, I directed, shot, edited, do all the things. The only
Mm.
thing out of all those that was any what kind of um, beneficial was, or like that actually past a certain bar, was the way it looked. And then
Mm.
people started, because there was a film festival in my town, started networking, and people started asking me to shoot their project. I was young, didn't have any responsibilities as far as like family. And so I would go to work and then shoot short films in the evenings.
Mm.
Um, So I was always constantly shooting. Like I was constantly shooting, commercial type stuff, and then I would shoot like art short films.
Gotcha.
And then so I shot several short films before I shot this one short film called Pillow. And I feel like at Pillow is when everything clicked for me. Like
Mhm.
everything started to make sense, the way that everything like lit, and like I started to understand the way production worked, and it just clicked. Like the sets, the from the sets to the wardrobe to the actors to the script, everything kind of clicked, and that changed everything for me. Once I shot Pillow, it kind of opened up. I got my first feature film off that, and then that feature film led to my next feature film, and it just kind of started rolling.
Gotcha.
But it was definitely that incubation time of being able to make stuff with my friends.
Got you. Yeah. So that's critical, that sort of ramp up to get to that opportunity moment
Yeah.
with Pillow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
Because
Cool. Cool.
essentially the eventually there will be that time. If you keep
Mhm.
shooting, there'll be
Right.
that time where it's that film. And then it's like I kind of knew it too with that film. I was like, this is the
Mhm.
time to deliver. Like, just
Mhm.
once you start seeing the sets and you start seeing, it's like, oh, this is the opportunity. And
Right.
so, yeah, that was it for me.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one's kind of staring you in the face to just like put on your best, your put your best foot forward and
Hmm.
sort of do your best work,
Yeah, I
which
mean, I couldn't have
paid
done
off.
that film the way that it looked. I couldn't have done that film if I didn't have all the stuff leading up to that. You know what I mean? I didn't know enough, and I didn't know I had to make, two or three, I guess that was probably five short films. That was the
Mm.
fifth short film. And
Gotcha.
so I needed all the mistakes that I made on those other films
Mhm.
so that I could make that film, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I needed to make a lot of mistakes. And I
Mhm.
needed to do that with my hands.
Right. Right. And go through it. Yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges I think for this industry. Anybody new in it is learning how to just charge forward, make the mistakes so that you can learn, because it's actually failing where you create
Failing
those new
upwards.
pathways.
Mhm.
Yeah, failing upwards, and you're putting yourself in these high pressure situations where you sort of have to, really perform and in order to move forward. So
Yep.
that's really important, for new filmmakers to understand, and also, working on. I mean, I come from a background of, I worked on tons of corporate and tons of commercial stuff as sort of the grip and, as camera team and these kinds of things. So I got to watch a lot of people that were already really good at their craft,
Mhm.
and um, and
Which
then
is
I'm,
important. I mean, that's important. I mean, I think that that's honestly like that is what this industry is missing.
Mhm.
I didn't have that. There's two paths, I think. I think there's the one of like just getting in there and doing it and like having the ability, which I feel like that's more unique because the more you screw up now, the more that you're like, that didn't look great.
Right.
Um, but then for the ever, it was an apprenticeship, like the way you're
Mhm.
talking.
Mhm.
And I think that, it wasn't until like, to be honest, until I was like 40, like the last several years, like up into my 40s, that I actually have a mentor, who's a cinematographer. I didn't have that to ask questions to like, and I think that's invaluable. Like that's the way to go. I mean, if you ask
Mhm.
me, it's like they can point you, and they've done all this before, and they know what it is, even just from a craft standpoint,
Mhm.
not necessarily a business standpoint, even though that would have been useful pre all this, but now it's changing so much that any old guard's not going to know what to tell you to do,
Right.
just because but they don't they'll be the first to tell you, it's like, I don't recognize this business. Yeah.
Yeah. Things changed that much.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. Well, so let's pivot a little bit and, fast forward a little bit to your career now.
Hmm.
Um, you know, you're you're working as a DP, and tell us about, like, how do you what are you doing now? Some of the you've mentioned some of the films that were coming out and some of the work you've been doing, so that everybody can knows to what to go look for you,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll go into some of the just sort of like how you approach it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just this past Sunday, a documentary that I executive produced and shot came out on premiered on Oxygen, now is on Peacock. It's called Southern Fried Lies. That's an hour and a half documentary. It's took us about 7 years from idea to now to get it
Mm.
out there.
Wow.
Before that, there's a show on HBO called Invisible Pilot that
Okay.
is a three-part series that I shot a lot of. It actually shows my trajectory as a DP on documentaries, because it took, like, they used a lot of interviews from the time we started shooting it, which was like 2012, and then
Wow.
it just came out in like 2023, I think.
Okay.
2020, yeah, to 2023. That's a three-part series. It was executive produced by Adam McKay.
Okay.
Um,
Wow.
and then there is a feature film, an indie film coming out in a couple of weeks in New York and LA called The Grotto. And that is directed by a Tony Award-winning actress, Joanna Gleason,
Oh.
who is also like a film and TV actor. She was in Boogie Nights and things like that. She's amazing. And it was
Mm.
really interesting working with, someone who has such a, like, amazing, like, theatrical background, and
Mm.
like working blocking and like having to talk about like the importance of, what the difference between theater and cinema is. And really
Mm.
it's so interesting when you have to articulate like what you're doing, because like really what we came to was like it's the close up. It's the moment that you cut from the tableau, the wide, into
Mm.
the situational stuff, like the overs, meaning
Mm.
over being like this way, that way, when you're
Mm.
talking about like we're having this conversation. And
Mm.
so it was really interesting. And that's coming out, like I said, I think the 17th of May.
Okay.
Um, there was a film I shot the Los Angeles portions of. It was a British film. It's called Midas Man. It was about Brian Epstein, the Beatles manager.
Oh.
And I shot the part where Ed Sullivan, played by Jay Leno, he comes back. Basically, Brian Epstein comes in and strong arms him into getting the Beatles on TV. I had
Gotcha.
no idea about that whole encounter, but I did shoot the LA part of that. So that
Gotcha.
was fun. I just
Nice.
finished a feature film in Portland. Have a music video coming out that'll be really fun next week. It's for a band called Small Isles, which that the guitarist for Modest Mouse. It's his kind
Yeah.
of art form,
Okay.
art installation.
Sweet.
And that'll be called People Come Down. It'll be fun. It's very much about the creative process of like how you get older and how you lose it. And my
Mm.
son actually stars in it. So
Oh,
yeah, it's
nice.
really fun. That was
Go for
really
that.
fun to do. Yeah, and so that's kind of what's coming down the pipe for me. Um, as far as like things that are coming out work-wise, I'm attached to shoot two feature films this year.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, that's kind of where everything's at currently,
Okay.
work-wise. And
Yeah.
between that, raising two kids, which is
Mm.
a massive job and probably the most important thing I'll ever do in my life, and that's really fun. And so it's like I've also grown a lot as like, I used to be so aggressively like I don't know, like very um you know the work. I still love the work that I do, but it's like it was everything to me.
Hmm.
But now having children, I've kind of got a better perspective on that now, and I think my
Yeah.
work has actually improved.
Mm.
So that's cool.
Yeah. You're not quite as obsessive about it now, and you're able to
Yeah,
loosen up a little bit, maybe. Yeah.
totally. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Well, it's great to hear all the things sounds like you're just like killing it over there. So, doing, you're traveling a lot, right? You don't shoot most of your stuff in LA, right? You're kind of
I mean,
all over,
unfortunately, no. It's like I moved out here to be at home
close to.
when I work,
Mm-hmm.
and I've shot one film since I've lived out here in California. Um, and that's just a bummer. It's just the nature of the business now. The most expensive place to shoot in the United States is California.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's everything's shifting.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is shifting. And so yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's shift again to our third topic, which is really just more about giving people advice, giving, your take on, we've already kind of heard a little bit, but let's maybe just kind of put it into a package that just kind of gives people an idea of, you know, what would you would recommend? I mean, we've talked about how everything's shifting, but there's a lot of things I think that still remain the same, and
Mhm.
that's sort of building your portfolio, real reputation, networking. Like, tell us, like, maybe give us advice. What do you think a good path forward for?
Cinematographer
Yeah, anyone wanting to do
or
this work?
anybody in the film industry. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
well, one, you know, I think if I could tell, and I'll say this to like my younger self, right? So if I knew then what I knew now, the way that I would have went about it, I'll give you two ways because they're the way that I would have personally went about it was after I finished my, general education, whatever that be, bachelor's or whatever, I would have then taken time to figure out to get on a film crew, similar to the
Mm-hmm.
way you went about it, Jeff. I would have figured out like just any way to get on a film crew, like PA, which will 100% be a PA. Like that's the way
Mm-hmm.
you're going to get in,
Yeah.
and knowing that that is what's going to happen, and that's the life that you're going to live, which is that's a transient life. It's
Mm-hmm.
very much akin to gypsy and um, carnival carnival like life. And so like if that's not your thing, you should know that that's what it's about because it is that way. Um
Mm-hmm.
and I would also like keep my footprint really low, like as far as what my needs are. I would lean into like that whole kind of like being able to like pick up at a drop of the hat and like just go. That's the way
Mm-hmm.
you're going to build network. That's the way you're going to build community. In this path. And then through that, I would figure out what I want to do in the film industry. And let's just say that's a cinematographer. So as quickly as like eat lunch with the camera team, like eat lunch close to them, listen to what they're talking about, try to find some way to fit in and start to discuss with them. And eventually, like at some point, somebody's going to ask you and or apply to like be a camera PA or something like that. And then you get in and you start working your way into like the positions in like of a loader or something like that, or a second AC or a first AC, and eventually like an operator and or a DP.
Mm-hmm.
That's one path, right? There's also the path of going to a very specialized school, which are very expensive, like AFI. If you're going to be a cinematographer, it's like I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't recommend anything other than AFI. And really, what you're going to learn at AFI, you will learn your craft, but you're going to have your collective, your team,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, the other path that could be is literally just like what I was talking about that happened to us in Arkansas is like they have a collective there. You have a collective now. Lean into
Mm-hmm.
that. Start making stuff. Don't wait for people to say, don't wait for everything to be perfect. Don't wait for a perfect camera. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough this. Don't have enough that.
Mm-hmm.
It's never been easier to make nice looking films. Start
Mm-hmm.
making films. Start making films. Start figuring out ways. I mean, there's this whole like movement of micro dramas. Are you guys familiar with that?
Mm-hmm.
About people are creating that stuff on social media, learning how to like what the language of cinema is through those platforms. Meaning, what is a close-up? What is a medium shot? What does that do? And start honing your craft that way, and that way you could actually start making money.
Yeah.
So those would be three different options. One being, lean into your group now when you're in college, and start making, or whatever that broader group is. Um, going to like finishing your degree, going to a finishing school, such as like a USC, a UCLA, or like NYU or AFI. I would not be going to graduate school and film school. I'll just be very clear, like honest about this, like in somewhere that you're not like, because it's a lot of money, and it's like what you really are going to get out of that is a network. And so you need to go somewhere where that network are like people that are like, if they're going to be paying significant amount of money, they're going to be like, these people are going to be trying to work in this industry. Like there is, they're not going to like go back to dad's farm or whatever. You want to be around people who are invested in doing this thing,
Right.
and the one surefire way to do that is like the amount of money that people spend on that thing. People are invested, and it's also harder to get in there. And if you have the ability to get in there and do it, then do it. I mean, just to be very clear, I wouldn't do that right now, just because of the nature of the industry. I would look at it more in these ways of these untraditional, the traditional way of like what we were talking about, as far as like coming up underneath, having what did we call it? The when you come up underneath apprenticeships.
Apprenticeship, yeah.
Yeah, that would be the way that I would push people to go, and then building your network out with the people that you're around, like that are like-minded, like right now in college.
Yeah.
The third one I would recommend is the traditional, like the more conventional route of going to like very expensive, graduate degrees. Your network gets built, but none of this is a surefire way. The most surefire way is to get in and start doing it, because you immediately are in,
Right.
and then it's just on you, and it's about the hustle,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about those people recognizing that on set and bringing you back and those kinds of things.
Because regardless if you go to a finishing school or not, yes, you'll learn how to make films. But the fact of the matter is, I've worked with a lot of those graduate kids that come out, and it's not that they still have to you still have to put your dues in, man. You still have to be on set. Like it's not it's not like a get out of jail free card. No. I mean, like I remember somebody telling me you have to shoot 10,000 hours before you know what you're doing. And I was like, that's bullshit. I already know what I'm doing. I look back at those things now, those films, and I'm like, really? I didn't know how to like manipulate things, to be honest with you, up until probably, I don't know, 6 years ago. You know what I mean? And like now I feel very confident that I can, I mean, for me, I can light my way out of anything. You know what I mean? Like I walk in and the set looks like shit. I can fix it with a big, strong backlight. You know what I mean? And I can make it tonally appropriate in the film so that it feels right, and or if you're running out of time and it's like, you know what we can do,
right?
And that just comes from experience.
Yeah. Seeing it done.
Yeah.
And trying things. Yeah. So, cool. So, I guess there's a lot to think about. And it reminds me sort of I've talked about this with my class a little bit, but there's a crew here that did the 48-hour film festival, which we've done.
Forgot about that.
You and I probably hadn't been on the same cruise, but that was a thing back 10 years ago.
To be honest, to be honest, I haven't even thought about that in a million years, but the first short film that someone told me looked good was on that 48-hour thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember that.
And
I won a cinematography award, and that kind of like lit the fire, And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what happened, actually.
It's crazy. And so it kind of forces you to create that community in a sense. And that's what happened last year with this group of students. who then won the Denver 48.
Rad.
And then, and then they went to the Film Palooza in Seattle, and then sort of won best audience in their grouping, and then got pulled out of a hat, and they're going to Cannes. So it's like crazy.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So these are all students of mine, or not all of them, but about half. So yeah, like it just shows you like how far that can take, a project. It doesn't seem like it could go that far, but it could,
Yeah. That's
so,
really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's kind of like a point of pride. It's like, you could create that opportunity for yourself. Like you said, it's sort of like, you're the one that can create that. So, pretty cool stuff. Let's open up. We don't have much time left. Let's open up to questions for my students to go ahead and ask you a few things. And so who has something you want to ask? Okay, John.
I love the projects that you worked on.
Can you hear him? John, you want to come up here and maybe that way he can hear you through this mic? Yeah, that's good.
Hi, Gabe. It's so nice to meet you. My wife and I loved Chimp Crazy. We watched that last year. We were over the moon for it. We loved Tiger King before that too. So one question that I have, how do you ensure that your style evolves with each project and doesn't end up looking the same across every one of them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think that what it is exactly what I'm saying. Like, I'm not trying to be dogmatic about my style. My style has to evolve with each soup of like the directors and whatnot. Like, there's a lot of times that, things are not like I end up like, for instance, I'm not big on Zoom. Well, for a long time I hated Zooms. But then I do a film and the director's like, we're going to be Zooming all the time. And this is why. And I'm like, that's a great idea. I don't personally like a Zoom, but what the aesthetic of the film, and because you're essentially serving the story of the film, and what we're trying to do as cinematographers, as a visual, is to say something with no words. We're saying something that translates immediately when someone sees it. It's like, oh, this feels unnatural or unnerving.
Yeah.
Then that's what a Zoom does. And so like I was like, oh, I get that, and so then that's what we're doing. So just not coming in, being an open vessel, and I think the older I got, the better I could do that, because I just wasn't so trying to prove so much. And I wish I could have learned that a lot, understood that's like, no, this is actually going to serve you in the long run if you're able to be open and learn from these people. Because it's like, a lot of people end up, as a cinematographer, you've been on the set a lot more than most people that are there, especially the directors. And so like eventually, people like lean on you for expertise in those areas, but then also like don't close that down. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like keep that open, that correspondence of creativity and like exploration open with you and your collaborators.
Okay.
Because it's going to be a better product.
Mhm.
It's always going to be a better product.
Nice.
Right on.
Good question.
Thank you, Gabe.
Cool.
Thank you.
Who's next? You gonna come up, Sola? All right, we have Sola.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi.
I was wondering, nowadays, what is the most difficult part of cinematography for you within the industry? Like, what do you find struggling with generally on projects, or is there anything, or do you think you've really gotten the groove of it, or?
You mean from like a craft standpoint, like doing the thing?
Yes, and also maybe if there are any industry challenges as well that you've
I mean,
been facing currently.
industry challenges are significant at the moment. It's an industry trying to find itself in a world of massive media, like mass media. So much that the eyeballs, people are much more interested in social media than they are in traditional media outlets. And so it's an industry trying to find its way there. As far as the craft, Um, no, I mean, there's just not. I don't. There's not a panic button. I don't like, the hardest thing for cinematographers, especially on scripted stuff, is day exteriors. Um,
Mm.
and those have always been a pain. And they're a pain. A lot of people, I've had producers, and I learned this, Jeff. When a producer says, "What's the problem?" It's all outside during the day. Why do you know what? I'm like,
That's
I
it.
should walk away. I should walk away from this project because the sun never stops moving, and you need to make it feel like it's not in the crappiest light of the day, and it maybe that takes place over at sunset, but it's 8 pages, so you can imagine like what you have to do, um, you for the amount of stuff you would need to make um, a certain shot look like sunset when it's midday and the sun's high. You just have a bunch of stuff that has to move around. It gets really slow. So day exteriors are kind of like the bane of any cinematographer's existence, but they're also like, there's a beautiful challenge because you do have to like craft so much with a lot of big things. It's kind of the funnest thing that you get to do now, but it's really rare that you ever get to have the budget to do that now. So it's like you have to schedule that during the day with the AD.
Mhm.
But as far as like craft, but that all comes with experience. When I first started, I was terrified of everything, every movement, everything. And it was the reason why I was like so controlling. I felt so controlled and I felt so stressed because I just didn't know. And I feel like everybody's going to have to go through that. Like you just have to go through it. There's no way around that one. Unless you're just born Vittorio Storaro or Roger Deakins, which I don't think they were born that way, but yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Old. Okay. Who else we got? Anybody throw a question at Gabe? Anybody else? You're supposed to come up with 5 of them. Yeah, come on. All right, we have Jonathan. You next.
Hi, it's
Hey.
very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I guess the question I have is, I guess geared to kind of people very new to the industry, and you've mentioned a lot about connections networking, and that's something that I've encountered in recently, is figuring out that sort of stuff. And so I guess the question I have is, when it comes to especially early early starts versus where you are now, how important connections have been with getting onto new projects, and how you've maybe gone from like needing connections to get onto projects versus being able to go solo into like projects and like starting stuff up on your own, and how much that networking has evolved throughout your career.
Yes. Like, so in the beginning, it was literally kind of like who I was around and close to, like in my immediate physical vicinity. Um, I think now that is very different, because, social media was kind of non-existent then. And sharing, it was all like just kind of new. And so like it was a very physical relationship of like being physical. What I mean by physical, like distance, like you physically can know these people. I think that is still important to build the people that you make stuff with, I think. And so in that regard, like I know that where are you guys at in Colorado? Like,
Colorado Springs.
okay, so there's probably a film festival there.
Yeah, there is. There's several. There's a couple little ones.
There's probably one in Denver. I know there's one in Telluride. I'm sure there's something in Boulder. Like, just start going. Have a card. I mean, maybe not a card. I'm guessing you do phone bump or whatever now, but just start and just go up. And you know what? You're gonna have, like, for me, I always thought it was like, well, what am I gonna talk to these people about? It doesn't matter. Just tell them like your film was amazing, and then have a question about it. um, you know, and just start. That's the way you start networking. I'd love to keep in touch. I live in, where are you from? Ask them like that kind of thing. Is there a way that you can connect on a thing that's not film? You know, And that's just start going to all this stuff. Start going to the theater. Like you see another dude out there wearing, a countdown shirt, be like, hey, what's up? I like your shirt, and just start talking that way. Cause there's a lot of people that love movies, and then also just online communities of, people your age and like that are cinephiles. Are you guys familiar with Letterboxd?
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like the social media of, that's a great kind of place to go. And then like I said, just start making stuff so that people can then also give you feedback. So it's the way forward in making anything is your network. It's like the biggest your biggest work right now is networking.
Mhm.
Like the craft will come and you're going to make mistakes, but it's your network that you're going to make the stuff with. So like that's, and then, it's directly related to how good your stuff looks, to be honest, because it wasn't until like, I started working with real directors that had, not real directors, but directors that had a very unique vision. And then, we had an amazing production designer and we had amazing locations. And that's when things kind of start changing, so like, and that all has to become part of your network. And that'll evolve over time, like it did for me. It was, probably 7 years of evolution up until that point.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sure. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Jonathan.
It's a good question.
Okay. Who else we got? Anybody else? Burning questions? Come on up.
Well, I haven't heard one question about what I shot anything with, which is, always used to be the question.
Yeah, right. All right. So you ready with your question? We have Liana here. Go ahead.
Reading between two of them.
Got a couple. You can ask both.
Okay.
I'll step in a little bit closer so you can see. There you go.
Hey,
Hi. So I have like two questions because they're both kind of the same thing, but a little bit different. The first one I have is, what are your favorite films visually and why?
Depends on the day. My default answer always usually is a film called Amelie or Delicatessen. Um, Delicatessen more so because it's a little warmer, but I also love Amelie because it's expressive. It's the thing that I love about that film, and it won't go any further, is this. So imagine reading that film on a script. It's a rom-com.
Mm-hmm.
But then what they did with it visually made it special.
Gotcha.
So,
Nice.
yeah. And then there was a film that was always, so the biggest film that had the biggest impact on me, I remember saying, oh, how did they do that? It was a film called Rules of Attraction. It's a film from the 90s. Roger Avery was the director, so the story goes, he actually wrote Pulp Fiction. I don't believe it, but that's the story. There's this split screen. It shows two people going about their days, and then they walk down hallways from opposite ends and come together, and then that shot pulls back into a two shot. And I was like, I remember thinking, okay, how did they do that? It was the first time I started thinking about like, what is a cinematographer? So I'd have to say that one.
Nice.
And it's also like it's the one of my biggest things is point of view. And what I mean by point of view is not necessarily like, it's whose point of view and when, and how subjective or objective is the camera at that point. Meaning, am I seeing you guys from a theatrical view, or am I inside the relationship in coverage? And why do you do that? Because those are all subjective things that the cinematographer has to think about. And that film has a lot to, like, it's kind of an amazing point of view film.
Gotcha.
That's it's not, maybe it's just in case you guys want to watch it, Jeff, you should watch it first because it's pretty raunchy. Yeah. Cool. Next one. Sorry.
this is the last one. I guess this kind of transitions to what you were saying before, which is, what is your approach to visual storytelling?
That's a very interesting question. My approach is to start from a place of exploratory and being ambiguous when I'm reading the script, and being more of a sponge to get feedback from my collaborators, and then also like look for inspiration in the sets, locations, and then the last thing I do is put my spin on it. You know what I mean? My spin kind of, it's not necessarily I cognitively like think like putting my spin on it. It's just like after I accumulate all the information, and then it kind of like all that information then goes out. I don't think like I'm not reading a script and I'm like, oh, that's like, so can do this really crazy jib shot right there or nothing like that. No, it's after conversations. So I just stay pretty open into like, and be a vessel for conversation and exploration. And then the last thing I do on every film actually is I end up sending out, I write out the visual language of a film, that the reason why we're going to light it, the way we're going to light it, the way the frames are going to be when we frame it, and the way that we're going to move the camera, and express that in a visual like spreadsheet that I can share with my crew, but I have to get the director to sign off on it. And it's a way that I can make sure that I am on the right path with this film visually. And then I can share that information with the lighting team, the camera team, so everyone knows. Not necessarily they have to have that information, but it's just like I want them to feel a part of the team to create this. And then also like, because that'll, basically inspire in them questions and or different ideas. Be like, hey, what if we did something like this? Because what you said, and it's just helpful to make sure everybody feels a part of the process.
Cool.
That's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I guess following up on that, you often sort of collaborate with the director. They come with their shot list and their coverage, and then you sort of add to that.
I mean, it depends. It really depends. I've worked with directors who are just like, we'll figure it out on the day. Which, depending on the film, can be great or not. I did a film called Lazy Eye. That's just the way we did it. But you can see that film, it would work. It worked for that film because it was 2 actors in basically 1 location. And then I've worked with directors a lot. Most of the time, it's working with directors and figuring out the shot list together. And basically, I use this thing called what's it called? It's called I can't remember. It's like Shot Designer. I think it's called Shot Designer. It's amazing. Yeah. It's just like a straight overhead. Yeah. Yep. I mean, it's the best because it's, for me, I just want an overhead so that everyone can see and understand, and they don't have to like get so specific about like, there's a couch here. And so, no, there's literally a thing here. All I need is a floor plan from the production designer. It's like, I just want to move these characters, and we can do the blocking beforehand. We know what the physical space is. We know what these people need to say, and I use that on every single film. And a lot of cinematographers use that. It's so simple and it's perfect. I don't need real people and like depth and all that. No, what I need is just overheads, so I can give it to the AD, so I can give it to, our lighting team. Like, this is where we're going. This is where the camera's looking.
We're gonna blast this through this window. These actors are gonna be here. It's gonna be their backlight, etc.
Yep. And I also do. I'm the type. I told you, like, the thing that I kind of started focusing on was lighting. Is like I light the sets before we even go in. Like, it's all on paper, and it's like it's this unit here for the majority of, definitely the big sets. But even down to the small sets, like the last movie I just did. I think I had, we had 30 something plus sets, and I had it all lit before we even started day 1. Not that it didn't change, because it certainly did. But it's like from that minute, boom, we're moving, because we had to, like, there wasn't any discussion, like these things were coming off the truck. Those were things were going up, so just happening.
There you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Cool. That's a nice way to keep it efficient. Cool. So anybody else have questions before we wrap this thing up? Any questions about just camera, lenses, anything like that? Come on up, John. Come on up, John. All right. So just a couple more here and we'll wrap it up,
Yeah.
John.
Hey, Gabe, back
Hey.
for more. So, digital technology, it's everywhere nowadays. What traditional techniques or philosophies do you still find useful in the modern day?
Oh, I never put down my light meter.
Okay.
And it, not that I'm trying to toot my own horn, but it makes me 10 times faster than any other cinematographer I know. Because I don't wait for monitors. Actually, I don't want, like, the lighting team, I don't ever want them looking at monitors until it's done. And then, like, if I'm operating, then I want my gaffer and key grip there at the monitor. But like the gaffer I work with, we all use monitor lighting. But like on the Alexa 35, the new version, like I did map the whole sensor and figured out like exactly where I needed to be to do that. And so then that setting goes into the gaffer's meter. And so once the lights are up, like I said, we create our lighting. We have our floor plan for it, and once they're up, I just walk around without looking at a monitor, and I'll tell you why. And then we just up down how to where I need it, like where I'm like, I want the back, like if it's sun coming through a big window or something, I want that to be, a stop and a half to 2 stops over. And then I want the fill that's coming in here to be a stop under or something like that. So I know all those values because it's all based off of what they call the zone system. And because I know what the sensor can record, and this goes into that whole documentary thing. So like I'm looking at a window that may be 7 stops over, but I know that camera records 9 stops. So then I start placing things according to my meter up and down that zone system that way. So I don't have to like spend time gelling that window because but the thing on the monitor, it'll look blown out.
Right.
But I know it's actually recording. It's not blown out,
Nice.
And so the monitor, unless the monitors have been scoped and or can express the dynamic range of what a camera can record, which none of them can. The best are 11 stops, and the worst camera is not even there. You know what I mean? It's recording over that, and so I just never put down my light meter.
Okay, right on.
So you're measuring like contrast ratios and that kind of thing, and trying to keep that consistent across
100%.
different coverage.
I never move like on a movie unless I go from like, a short lens to a long lens. Then sometimes I'll double the stop, just so the depth of field looks similar. But once we set a stop on a movie, usually like in my stops, usually a 2/8/4 split. It never changes. Like lens goes on, it goes to a 2/8/4 split. We light to it, and that's just the way I like to. And I'm saying that's generally the purpose, but it's not always that way. Like if we go to like night or something like that, then we're wide open. Or something that can happen certainly. But for the majority of time, it's like it's set at a specific stop.
Okay.
Cool.
All right.
Great.
My second one, how do you navigate the balance between director's vision and your own creative instincts if they were to conflict?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So what, essentially the dime stops with the director. It's their frame. It's their show. But as far as like having those creative conflicts, essentially you need to be able to understand, like in any relationship, I think, I want to understand their point of view. I want to understand where they're coming from. a need to be heard. I need to, from my point of view, to be heard as well. But then when it comes down to like where it gets really tricky is when a director may have lost the trust of their producer and the producer comes to you, which does happen a lot. Not a lot, but like it's happened to me several times. And they're like, hey, and then you're like, okay. That's where it gets really tricky. But essentially, they're just trying to keep it simple as far as like, just try to be, know that the idea is that we're both trying to create the best image that we can, right? And I need to hear their point of view. I need to understand that point of view and try to not get defensive, but sometimes it's impossible, especially when you're dealing with things that are creative. It's like having a child and someone telling you like, your child sucks. He's being really mean to mine. It's hard to hear, but it happens. And, same thing with saying, this, the way that you lit this sucks. But it needs to change, and it needs to change. And this is why, like, I just want to hear why, I need to make it brighter or whatever. And then I need the space to say my side of things of why I was thinking it was this, So I just think that, like in any relationship, just being validating, hearing and validating on both sides of it. And, 9 times out of 10, anytime that's ever happened to me, and it's been that way where we're able to like have a constructive conversation about it, it's never been mine or theirs. It's always been in between. And guess what? It was way better.
Right on.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you, Gabe.
Thanks. All right, Gabe. Well, appreciate the heck out of this, man. It's been great.
Awesome.
And yeah, I'm so stoked to be able to reconnect. And it's been like way too long.
Time. Yeah, it's the time.
So we've got our project coming up that we hope to bring you over for.
That'd be so fun, man.
Yeah, be sweet. So we'll see how that works. But until then, we'll just catch up next time, man.
All right, man.
Yeah, thanks so much
Good to
again.
see
You too. Best on everything that's coming up.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take care. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.